As an ag solution provider, we are committed to fostering a market that recognizes and values the positive impacts agriculture can have on the environment. We then set out to nurture those markets by providing innovative solutions that support farmers to achieve their sustainable farming outcomes and to grow their businesses. Today we have a wonderful program for y'all. I am honored to introduce our sponsored party, the Sand County Foundation, whose mission for nearly 60 years has been to focus on the intersection between agriculture and environmental improvement. We also have the privilege today to introduce the 2024 Leopold Awardee for the Carolinas. Following that, we will get to hear about some of the work the Sand County Foundation has done alongside farmers during a fireside chat with a small group of Leopold awardees. Before we go there, though, I'd like to introduce BASF to some of our guests and explain how we all ended up here at the Center for Sustainable Agriculture in RTP, North Carolina. For those who may not be familiar with BASF, we are a chemical company with a diverse portfolio of over 40,000 products that span multiple sectors. We operate in an energy-intensive industry with integrated value chains that require a lot of different transformative measures to achieve our goal of net zero CO2 emissions by 2050. We believe that agriculture can help many of these value chains achieve their targets and be successful by becoming the solution for defossilization and decarbonization. As BASF, we have set global targets to reduce our emissions to reduce the emissions of row crops by 30% by 2050, and increase 7% annually our share of solutions that promote sustainable farming. Now, more than ever, farmers must pursue productivity and sustainability to continue to provide us with food, fuel, and fiber. For us, sustainable agriculture requires collaboration and supporting farmers along the entire value chain, connecting innovation, action, and new business opportunities, along with partnerships with like-minded stakeholders who share this vision of transformation. BASF and Sand County Foundation have shared interests in both sustainable agriculture and supporting the farmers. We at BASF feel that we have a duty to provide solutions to the mounting challenges faced by farmers of today and tomorrow, and we know that farming is the biggest job on earth. Therefore, we see our position very clear. BASF must support farmers in sustainably caring for their land and also advocate for groups like the Sand County Foundation that hold farmers and environmental conservation at the forefront of their work. And I don't have my clicker, just a second. Okay. So why are we here? Farmers are facing a lot of challenges in this world. Our world is facing a lot of challenges, period. And this is having a direct impact on farmers. First of all, there are more mouths to feed globally. More mouths with less arable land. That means the productivity on each acre has to increase. Rural communities are also heavily dependent on the economic success of farmers. And agriculture is the backbone of small towns and communities. Protecting natural resources, so soil health, soil productivity has declined since the ground was initially broken. Thanks to the efforts of many innovative farmers and soil conservationists and foundations like the Sand County Foundation, progress has been made and soils have been regenerated, but there is still more work to do. In addition, climate change. Climate extremes, whether it be drought or excessive rainfall, early frosts, late frosts, periods of drought, all of these have a direct impact on agriculture productivity and a farmer's bottom line. The silver lining, however, is that at the end of the day, modern agriculture, sustainable farming practices can be a solution to these key challenges. So our aspiration as a company to believe, and we firmly believe, that what is right for the farmer is also right for the planet, vice versa. These do not have to be mutually exclusive. Our commitment to our customers is to provide the technologies, the pathways, and the advocacy to help farmers be successful in their sustainable farming journey so that they can continue to thrive and to grow their sustainable farming practices. This is why we have decided to sponsor with the Sand County Foundation and find ways to work more closely with them. Sand County Foundation is a highly respected national nonprofit organization that for nearly 60 years has been working at the intersection of agriculture and environmental improvement. The foundation works in partnerships with farmers, ranchers, and forest landowners to advance conservation-minded land management. The Sand County Foundation upholds and honors the concept of a land ethic, first introduced by Aldo Leopold in his book, A Sand County Almanac. A land ethic is simply a vision shared by conservationists across the world, the vision that each person has a responsibility to take care of the land, the water, and wildlife. Aldo Leopold believed that farmers and ranchers could lead the way in environmental conservation because their livelihoods are naturally tied to the land. Leopold encouraged private landowners, like farmers and ranchers, to adopt their own land ethic. Sand County Foundation understands that farmers have a delicate balance to uphold between conservation and profitability, and this balance requires new solutions to sustain the land. For this reason, Sand County empowers farmers to ensure that they have the right solutions to challenges related to soil health, to conserve water resources and wildlife habitat that are both effective and affordable. Sand County Foundation employs teams of agricultural conservation scientists to provide practical land management techniques to benefit the environment and the farmer's bottom line. They conduct research and demonstrate emerging conservation practices like cover cropping and managed grazing, for example. Sand County Foundation empowers farmers nationwide to practice good stewardship and provides more access to systems and resources that yield good business and success. The Leopold Conservation Award is one of the Sand County Foundation's flagship initiatives. Established to honor landowners who exemplify outstanding conservation efforts and innovative land management practices, the award recognizes those who embrace the principles of land ethic in their own agricultural production. It aims to celebrate and promote sustainable farming practices that not only protect the environment, but also enhance agricultural productivity. The Sand County Foundation and its award have garnered positive opinions within the agricultural and environmental communities. Many view the foundation's work as essential in helping to bridge the gap between agricultural productivity and environmental sustainability. The organization is praised for its practical approach to conservation, offering resources, mentorship, and financial support to farmers, particularly those who may be historically underserved. In addition to recognizing individual landowners, the Sand County Foundation's initiatives inspire broad partnerships and policies that support sustainable practices in agriculture. The Foundation's emphasis on collaboration and innovative solutions has positioned it as a leader in the movement toward more environmentally responsible farming, making it a respected voice in discussions about agriculture, conservation, and climate change. Overall, the Sand County Foundation and the Leopold Conservation Award are seen as pivotal in fostering a culture of stewardship within the agricultural community, encouraging farmers to adopt practices that not only benefit their operations, but also contribute to the overall health of the environment. For these reasons, we are proud to sponsor their efforts and look for finding ways to work more closely with the foundation. Next, I'd like to introduce Lance Irving. Lance serves as the Vice President of the Sand County Foundation. Lance took the helm of the Sand County Foundation's Leopold Conservation Award program in 2016 and developed it into a coast-to-coast landowner recognition and conservation outreach program after more than 15 years of experience in the outdoor sporting goods industry. Prior to that, he worked as a professional wilderness hunting and fishing guide. As Chief Sales and Marketing Officer at 2 outdoor manufacturing companies, Lance became a recognized leader in the industry. His work has been profiled in trade publications and television programs, and he has been honored with several high-profile awards. He lives on a southern Wisconsin hobby farm with his wife and children, where he's reestablishing native prairie. Join me in welcoming Lance Irving.
Well, thank you so much. What a kind introduction. That's fantastic. One of the things that I like to tell people that is a primary role of mine with Sand County Foundation through the Leopold Conservation Award is telling good news stories. There are good news stories happening every day on working land, and that doesn't get shared enough. I'm so happy to be here today, and we're going to introduce you to 3 outstanding Leopold Conservation Award recipients who are not only amazing land stewards, they're amazing people. And by hearing from them, I hope you come away inspired. I hope it triggers questions. I hope it leads you to try and figure out how you can make your piece of land just a little bit better. One of the unique things about the Leopold Conservation Award program, which is now in 28 states throughout the country, is that there is no minimum or maximum acreage. There is no requirement to grow a certain type of crop or to raise any livestock. It's truly about recognizing who among us is doing the very best with their unique conservation opportunities. As we go through this next hour or so, I think you'll see these are some people that are really figuring out what is the right thing to do on their land and how can they showcase by their example that conservation and production can and should have a symbiotic relationship. So what we've got first up is our 2024 Carolinas Leopold Conservation Award recipient. The Carolinas Leopold Conservation Award is presented in partnership with Sand County Foundation, American Farmland Trust, BASF, and Carolina Farm Trust to recognize not only just a leader from North Carolina, but the Carolinas combined. This year, our 2024 recipient is Russell Hedrick. He's a first-generation farmer. He's also, you may know him as the dryland corn yield record holder, but that's not why he was recognized. He was recognized for his conservation practices that he has implemented. In his first 10 years of owning the farm, he took that soil from 1.7 to 8.2% organic. That's what's getting recognized. That leads to the yields, but it's the work done prior that is really being recognized. He also should be recognized for one of his companies, Farmers Reserve Distillery, for creating the first North Carolina bourbon since Prohibition. So obviously filling a market need there, and we are all collectively appreciative of him bringing that to market. So one of the aspects of the Leopold Conservation Award program is a video that is created that visually can tell the story of some of the conservation success. So Please join me now in watching a little bit more about Russell.
The history of this farm is actually pretty neat. They started developing a neighborhood around here in the 60s and 70s, and this was actually the last tract of land that hadn't been developed. And so we bought it from a family that had owned it for about 120 years at that point. And their biggest concern was everything had been built into houses, and they wanted to see, some farmland maintained in this area. So I think that's actually one of the reasons that we ended up being able to buy it instead of a developer. We're currently looking at, working with a nonprofit to actually get a conservation easement put on here where it'll always be farmland. Conservation to me is making sure that the land is going to be here for the next generation. When we think about land conservation, we're thinking about reducing tillage, which helps us reduce erosion, planting cover crops, building that soil and that organic matter. We also know that, carbon is the ultimate driving system now. And then also really conservation of all our other resources. When we keep the soil intact, we don't flush nutrients into the water system. We keep our water clean, and that's just better for every generation to come. My look at regenerative agriculture is I'm going to increase the value of this land, the production of this land, and try to make it where if my kids decide that they want to farm, it's going to be easier for them. They're not going to be as reliant on fertilizer. And so for me, I think that if we're increasing water cycles, mineralization of fertilizer, and that nutrient cycle and that biology continues to go up, to me, that's regenerative ag. The tools that we use in regenerative agriculture, predominantly our planters they're all no-till. So we've actually built a fertilizer bar where we're injecting our phosphorus 6 to 8 inches deep. It's safe, it's going to stay down there. We're not going to see that wash off into the rivers and streams. And it costs us about $5 an acre. And the benefit we see from that is actually bigger. And the conservation from that is 10 times what it would be if we were still farming the same way. Really looking at all the different principles of soil health and all the different ways that we can actually affect land has really been able to increase our resiliency when it comes to hard weather years. I was a career fireman for 12 years, and my grandpa used to cut hay on about 10 acres. We had about 5 or 10 cows growing up. He had a mill job and kind of had cows as a hobby. That kind of piqued my interest. I think I just really liked tractors and loud diesel engines. It was kind of amazing to me that you could plant a seed, that would sprout, and then that would grow food for people to consume. I would say 4 or 5 years old, that kind of piqued my interest, and then saved up enough money while I was a career fireman and just kind of made the jump into farming full time back in 2015. So the crops that we grow predominantly are corn and soybeans. We've integrated livestock to the farm. We've had cattle, we've had pasture pigs. And the problem is we travel so much and try to help other farmers, it's hard for us to maintain livestock. We grow a lot of corn, whether that be yellow corn, whether it be Jimmy Red and Bloody Butcher, that's one of our red corn varieties. Then we've got Blue Hopi, we've got Blue Claridge, we're growing some green Oxanan corn. What we try to focus on in our grain production is where can we go value added. There's a group of farmers that we pulled our resources together and started Regen Mills, which is a mobile mill that we can grind grits, cornmeal, we can grind flours, we can do gluten-free like buckwheat, sorghum. Another avenue is the distilleries for us. So we supply City Walk, Foothills Distillery, and then we also have Old Nick Williams and Farm Reserve Distillery that we supply those 3 distilleries with grains that they can turn into bourbon, whiskey. They're actually making gin and vodka out of it now. And so trying to go after those higher end markets really has helped the bottom line of the farm. For me, I just want to make a living at farming that we make enough money that my family can live comfortably. I don't think we have to get rich at farming. I don't think any farmer gets rich at farming if they're doing it honestly. But for me, it's just to have the option for my kids to come back to the farm. If they don't want to farm, that's fine with me. This is my dream. This is my passion. If they don't want to farm, when I retire, we'll sell all the equipment. We'll probably lease the land to another farmer that wants to have farmland because we continue to lose farmland here to development. But I'll just cash out the equipment and maybe have some money to help my kids follow their dreams.
All right. Come on up, Russell.
Got to look at the name tags.
Yep. All right. So wonderful, wonderful. So Russell, you were just awarded not 6 months ago or so. So tell us just a little bit what's gone on since that time.
So we had a field day on the farm, and Lance got to come out. Got the Leopold Award, and about 3 weeks later, we got hit by Hurricane Helene. So that kind of threw a wrench in our plans, but we've got through harvest. We went up on the mountain, so the drones that you saw in the videos, there was a team of about 6 farmers. We went up there, we flew food, water, baby supplies to people using drones. Came back off the mountain. We've been working on getting cover crops established and trying to do everything we can to keep pushing forward with our soil health journey.
Wonderful, wonderful. We have another fine land steward that will be joining us here, and we'll learn a little bit more with their video. Loran Steinlage was the 2023 Iowa Leopold Conservation Award recipient. And I'll let the video explain more of what he's doing. Excuse me. But Loran's a pioneer of relay cropping, and he's figured out how to scale back acres but still maintain profit. He's figured out how to understand the land and make it work so that there's a work-life balance. He's got a global influence and at a local level. Oh, thank you so much. So Loran is known far and wide as somebody that just about everyone can call and ask questions. And if Loran doesn't know the answer, he probably knows the person that knows the answer. On his farm, he has a brook trout population in Iowa farm country. If you know anything about brook trout, they are one of the most finicky fish in North America for water quality. And the fact that he has them on his farm is just a testament to all that he does. One of the other things I'll say about Loran before I let the video introduce him much better than I can is I was having dinner with Loran recently, and he said something somewhat tongue-in-cheek, but it was completely true. He said, "Let me show you my resume." And he pulled out a picture of 2 soil cores. Soil that he's been managing for 30 years and soil that he's been managing for 5 years. And you can see the visible difference. And he's really walking the walk and talking the talk. So let's watch a short video about Loran and why he was recognized.
Our farm was founded here in 1968 by my dad, Florian, and Leona. They moved here from a little farm near Jericho, Iowa. And the history of this farm is that it was known as the poor farm. Nobody ever actually made a living here until my dad actually bought it. About 2006 is when we really started changing a few things, but it wasn't until 2009 when my son Roland was diagnosed with a pineoblastoma that we started losing land, and in a matter of 2-3 years we went from 2,500 acres that we were managing and operating down to 600. And that's when I had to start learning, and I had to do better with what we had.
Loran is the type of person, he's not afraid to make a change. And I just trusted in the process. And I just got behind him, and usually every change we made, there was a risk. Sometimes we failed, but we always learn from it.
2006 is when we started doing the interseeding in corn. I knew I needed the diversity in that, but I just couldn't figure it out until it was when Roland was sick. I would throw myself into the shop, building equipment, researching what we were doing wrong, how we could do better. That's how I kept my mind off of Roland's illness.
And that's really why we started changing, is so we could have more family life. He just switched the whole farming operation, and he was involved in the whole journey and the radiation and chemo.
To me, the best return on investment right now is the return on family time, the return on friendship, stuff like that. The people around me has probably been the most critical investment I've ever made.
I've always appreciated his ability to be open-minded and his willingness especially to share and invite people to the farm to share his experiences, good or bad, and then be able to tell that story and then help others then come into that world and learn from it.
Educating other farmers, to me, it's pretty simple. Hands-on and farmer to farmer. Get them out in the field and show them what is going on.
Anything from large presentations to growing overseas to as simple as a text message or a phone call to an individual. He's always willing and open. Peer-to-peer engagement is very, very big.
My dad started no-tilling in the early 80s. Our rotation then at most was corn, alfalfa. We started learning, hey, we could probably make no-till work. That's how I could inject diversity into our corn-on-corn system. By 2006, we kind of started doing field scale testing. By 2012, we were doing whole fields instead of just field scale. And then by 2014, every acre of corn was getting the interseed cover crops in corn. And it's like, well, cover crops are great, but if we can start figuring out how to generate more revenue with cash crops, that's pretty cool too. That is kind of what gave way to what we call the relay cropping now. For those that don't understand what relay cropping is, it's the act of planting crops in a different season and then harvesting either together or separate. We plant the cereal rye in the fall in paired rows, and we leave a gap for the soybean. Come through in the spring, the rye is emerged. We go in, sneak in between the rows, we plant the soybean at a normal time. About mid to late July, then we will go in and sneak the cereal rye out. With the soybeans already usually 6 inches to 2 foot tall. And that allows us a cash flow. By the time we harvest the soybeans on a normal year, when we run the numbers, I can compete with 250 bushel an acre corn. Some of the key pieces to make the relay cropping work, and that is number one, the drills. We already had the drills set up to interseeding corn. Now we space the wheels out on our combines and all that to allow us to go down in between the rows and not harm the soybeans as we're taking out the cereal rye, and then we'll come in the fall and cut the soybeans.
What we've been able to do is take what Loran's doing here, expand it to other farmers around the state. Now that practice is really taking off throughout the state, and we're seeing great results. Loran is very forward-thinking, and he's willing to try anything. And so we've been able to work together through the Iowa Flood Center to bring out hydro stations that measure soil moisture, rainfall, and then we're able to then take that and get evapotranspiration. We use that data to learn how the practices that Loran's doing on this farm handle rainfall differently than a conventional field. So far, the data that we've been able to collect here, we've been able to show that that would actually have a huge impact on potential flooding in these watersheds. And then we're able to use that data to show not only other farmers how they can impact the landscape and the rivers and streams around them, but also show legislators, congresspeople, conservationists, anybody, how what happens on the land can have a direct impact to our rivers and streams. So in Iowa we have trout, and the cool thing about trout, if they're present, they're a very representative species of good water quality. And there's a tiny stream here that runs right through Loran's farm. We were able to bring the DNR down and show that there are trout reproducing right here, right behind his barn. And that wouldn't happen if he were not taking care of the land around it.
How did I feel when I won the award? I think it's safe to say the emotions leaked out a little bit. And every time I think about the significance of that, the heart still wells up a little bit.
I'm just so proud of him. He's worked so hard. This has been a very humbling experience for him, but also for me to watch him go through this and see all the risk and the changes that he has done has been for the better of our environment.
In the conservation world, you see a lot of times where people that have been doing the right things for a long time don't get recognition. It's just kind of taken for granted. And so it was great to see somebody that's been kind of a front runner in this whole thing to get some recognition. And I think he embodies the spirit of Elder Leopold and being a steward of the land.
We as farmers, we do have an impact on the greater system. I want to see what we can do better.
All right, Loran, would you join us up on stage here?
Still leak. Might need some more water.
Yeah.
See, he was pre-choked up already.
All right. Well, thank you. Well, Loran, it's been about a year and a little bit since you received the Leopold Conservation Award in Iowa. Can you tell us a little bit about, what the recognition has been like? What's changed in the last year or so?
I would say probably the biggest thing we noticed right off is the camaraderie amongst the Leopold winners. And, we've been fortunate to go see several of them since the winning the award, but just that knowing you're not the only one out there anymore doing some of this stuff is reassuring. We never went looking for awards or stuff like that, and to have it land on your doorstep has just been one of those set you back in the seat pretty hard moments.
Wonderful. Wonderful. And we have another Leopold Conservation Award recipient that we're going to invite to the stage. We're not going to show the video on this one so that we've got more time to learn from these wonderful individuals. But
I was going to say, it was on 8 millimeter.
So Jimmy Emmons was our 2017 Oklahoma Leopold Conservation Award recipient. In addition to being an outstanding farmer and rancher, Jimmy now serves as the Senior Vice President of Climate Smart for Trust in Food. And just 3 or 4 days ago, Jimmy was awarded the No-Till Innovator of the Year Award. So Jimmy is prominent throughout the nation, and I'm gonna let Jimmy talk a little bit about kind of a national perspective as he travels so much. But Jimmy also has a pretty fascinating story on the actual day of his Leopold Conservation Award presentation. So in Oklahoma, Jimmy was presented the award in front of the legislature, and there's a special session to recognize him. And I was there, and we're getting ready to talk about all of the wonderful things that Jimmy is doing on his farm and his ranch. And all of a sudden, phones start ringing. Everything starts buzzing because there's a giant wildfire going through his ranch. So on the same day that Jimmy received the award for everything that he had done, Mother Nature came through in the form of a wildfire and really tested the resilience for which Jimmy has been recognized. So I'd like to invite Jimmy on stage now, maybe tell a little bit about what that was like and a little bit of that story.
Well, that's quite a way to start off. So, you want to talk about that first, or you want to talk about the overview
Let's
first?
talk about that, and then your national perspective.
So, that was a tremendous day to be recognized, and Loran hits it really hard. You saw Russell. A very prestigious award that we didn't look for. It came to us, and Oklahoma being the inaugural recipient, went all out. And so, like I said, we were down at the Senate floor being recognized, and over at the Department of Ag, and it was really great. Things were going really well. You'd have to really know me like Lance does, and these two know that my phone rings a lot. And I promised my wife, Ginger, I wouldn't answer my phone and try to be on my phone all the time that day. And so as it started buzzing and it continued to buzz a time or two, eventually your curiosity gives in, and that's when we got the notice that a huge wildfire had started, and extreme. It's kind of like I would compare it kind of similar to the California fires right now, other than we only had 40 to 60 mile an hour winds and 3% relative humidity and about 90-some degrees. So for the next 9 days, it was pretty traumatic. So we had the highest of all highs you've ever experienced to heading home. It's 2.5 hour drive home from the event, not knowing, if your house is going to be there, if your 300 head of animals are going to be alive, and so it was quite a weak experience. But the good thing is that the cattle survived pretty well. Not too many loss of life there on our ranch. And part of it is because of the conservation and that we'd been applying, and we'd done Eastern Red Cedar Eradication Program with the government. So that we had a big fire, but my neighbors and landlords, some that I leased from, had not done that, and the fire was so intense that actually the fence post bent over in heat, and the fire departments told us, that was like several thousand degrees Fahrenheit of heat coming off with them trees. So a traumatic time period. And the thing about it wasn't just one day. It blew past us on the first day 40 miles to the north, and then we had a wind shift, and here it came back beside that, and we had extreme winds. And on like the fourth day, we were moving cattle out of a blackened area into some cover crops, trying to save them, and we've been trying to find them for days. And the fire department called me and said, "What do you want out of your house?" It's like, "What are you talking about, man? There's no fire that way." And they said, "Yeah, the high line's arced a mile south of your house, and we need to know what you want out of your house, like now." And so the roller coaster emotions really rolled. So I'm gonna have to kind of quit talking about that, or I am gonna get caught in that.
So I want to kind of talk a little bit about community involvement, and because conservation and agriculture is a community. And Loran, in your video, there's I think it alluded to it a little bit, but you've got sensors, water sensors. Can you talk a little bit about the impact of what you are doing on your farm to the greater community, say in relation to like Cedar Rapids?
Well, if you saw the sensors in the video there, the first year we acquired the farm right next door was a farm that we used to use in all our demonstrations on what not to do. So when we had that chance, we always talk about establishing a baseline. We had the chance right before us to establish the baseline. Then 100 feet away, we have probably what I would call one of our best farms for the practices we're doing. So we set it up with Ross on the video there that we do evaporation, transpiration, infiltration, all that. And the first year data we knew was pretty spectacular because they started talking about we could actually hold more than 50% more water than the neighbors in the watershed. Well, part of the original concept of that whole trial that we are going through is they're going to use that to build a model for Cedar Rapids, Iowa, and that data is due to be released this summer. What they're going to probably do, though, is actually list how many houses that is saved each year on the major floods. Now, you start thinking about the impact we have. That's how we're going to get John Q. Public's attention in my mind. And, how are we going to make lasting change? Bring it right to the consumer's front door. And when you start talking thousands of houses, and I bring a full circle like Russell, think about the people in Western Carolinas here right now. If we could somehow I don't care what you call what we're going through right now, if it's climate change, what it is, but if we can somehow figure out with our farming practices and that to change that long term, what else are we out here for?
Absolutely. And kind of another community impact. Jimmy, I know that you've worked with a couple of folks on a mill plot. Can you, for those of us that are not familiar with that, can you explain what that is and your community involvement with that?
Yeah, how that originally got started was my good friend that's the director of the Conservation Commission in Oklahoma, Trey Lamb, and we were talking cover crops one day, and he said, hey, got this idea. What if we could put some, like vegetables and stuff in our mix? You think they would grow? And I said, well, yeah, I think so. I don't know why they wouldn't. We're growing a 15, 20 waste species right now. And he said, I wonder if we could do that on an acre or two and see how that goes. And if that works, I wonder if we could partner with the regional food bank and local pantries, and farmers could donate an acre of land apiece, and they could come and glean these vegetables and stuff. And so we talked to Green Cover Seed out of Nebraska, and originally we called it a chaos garden because it was just mixed all in, and instead of going down a row and picking squash or tomatoes or okra, you kind of had to hunt and pick because it was in the cover crop and all. And year two, and it worked the first year, in year two we had 23 gardens established across 77 counties, and we had a formal signing ceremony with the regional food bank and local pantries. And just on our garden plot, one day we picked 2,400 and some pounds of vegetables and really overwhelmed the local pantries. So it was a great community builder. It was a great organizational builder because we worked with the Oklahoma Conservation Districts, Oklahoma Conservation, and then NRCS, and several oil companies have time that employees can participate in local community efforts as part of their programs, and so they came out to help pick, and so it was quite an experience, and it worked really well. And for about 6 years, it was really good. And then we went through a period of tough times in budgets and at the food bank, and guess what program got cut? The lowest budget item but low-hanging fruit sometimes is easy to. But Ginger and I and Trey and others, we didn't stop just because they stopped. We continue, and we still continue to grow. Local churches help us now and other things. So it's an ongoing project. Pretty good.
Wonderful. Well, one of the things that kind of sets the land up for success is improving the land year by year. And Russell, I know you do a ton of soil testing and plant tissue testing and trying to figure out the right prescription for your acres. Can you tell us a little bit about what you've learned from that and kind of the background of why you get as many numbers and data points as you do?
So when we first started farming, really I guess you could say I was a YouTube certified farmer, being first generation. And really the only thing I could find on the internet at that time, this is 2010, 2011, when we were looking to go into farming, the Haney test really wasn't talked about. So for North Carolina, we used the Millick 3, and it was developed here around 1985, 1986. And it uses old, outdated chemistry. It's got a really harsh extractant, so we're over-pulling nutrients, and it gives the farmer a false read of what nutrients you actually have available. And so then I heard about Rick and Liz Haney, flew down to Texas, met Rick and Temple at the USDA ARS, and Rick said, Millick 3 essentially has an extractant that would be close, let's just call it hydrochloric acid. If it rained hydrochloric acid, we would all be dead. And then he said, I made an extractant that has water and 3 organic root exudates. And if that happens, you grow food. And so we started looking at the difference, and a lot of the university gave us a lot of pushback and said, if you cut down on your nutrients, you're going to mine that soil and your crop response is going to go down. And so at no point in time did the old chemistry that we've had for 60, 80 years now look at soil biology, did it look at soil carbon levels, and how that cycle happens. And so, like, to give an example, we've got a new test called a TND, total nutrient digestion. And in my fields in Hickory, North Carolina, we've got about 2,100 pounds of phosphorus in the top 6 inches. Now, if you look at a biological test like the Haney test, roughly about 2% of that is plant available. Well, if you think that you're going to go out as a farmer and apply 100 pounds of DAP, which has 46 pounds of phosphorus, and you're going to change that number, that's probably not going to happen very much. That's why it's a fertilizer response curve is what I found out. It's not a if we apply X, we get Y. And so that's why we've really focused on learning about soil biology, learning how nutrients cycle and become plant available. Because as a farmer, I can grow a cover crop and build biology, or there are biological products now that are available that we can use as farmers that give us a better return on investment, and we're not over applying fertilizer and putting that in the local ecosystem. And that's what we really focus on.
Wonderful, wonderful. I know farming now is highly technical. There's a lot of technical innovations. There's a lot of technology. Jimmy, can you touch on a little bit what you're seeing on a national scale as far as not only attitudes toward adopting new technologies, but what you see on the horizon as serving to really benefit today's farmer?
Yeah, as you said, technology is coming so fast, and with the programs I run at Trust in Food, we're all over the country. I've been in like 40-some states the past several years. In the last 2 years, I've been in about 20, more than once a year. We met a tomato and a small vegetable grower in Oklahoma, in eastern Oklahoma, that I wasn't even aware of, Crow's family farm. And I learned then that a single tomato plant, how many pounds of tomatoes do you think is possible off a single plant? Anybody got an idea? For me, maybe it's 2 or 3 or a dozen. It's actually, the world record is 1,000 pounds of tomatoes. Crow's family farm has found out through technology and precise nutrient timing, much like what Russell does, they're at 873 pounds per plant, and they have like 12 greenhouses. So you can imagine the volume of just tomatoes that comes from that using technology. And that's just one example of something that we don't even think about that's possible. Russell's hit 500 bushels of corn. So that technology continues to come, and it's a high adoption curve and learning curve for us all. But it's unrelentless, and it's so good. I mean, to be able to monitor in the ground water in your profile, you're like Loran is, that you know that your infiltration rate has went from a ½ inch an hour to 12 inches an hour. And so even if you're irrigating, it makes your irrigation more efficient. So every drop counts. So that technology continues to come. We went to a northern Cheyenne Arapaho tribe in Montana that is moving buffalo with water. And so the government has helped them run miles of pipelines, and so they turn one tank off, turn another tank on, so that the buffalo migrate and graze in their natural environment the way they used to. They went where there was food and there was water. And when they run out of either one of them, they moved on. And so sometimes the technology can really help us in a simple way, but a complicated way. And I think that's the way we got to look at it. And how do we, each one of us, use that to help us improve our technology and improve our efficiency and our ROI? I mentioned this morning that my granddad, he came to our farm in 1926, and he left us in 1995. He started walking behind a mule plowing the land, got to see a man land on the moon, wound up with a power steering tractor with live PTO and 3-point before he passed away. I mean, I hear companies tell me sometimes that the farmers don't want to change. It's not farmers. All humans don't want to change. We like the easy button. But if farmers didn't change, we'd be using a stick to plant a seed still. We have changed, and we change in necessity to be more profitable, more sustainable. And so we've come a long way, baby, from a stick and a seed to where we're at now, and that's going to continue to grow at an escalating rate.
Absolutely. It's amazing the technology advances just seemingly happening every day. Loran, with all this new technology out there, what are some things that these companies that are creating this technology should know from a farmer perspective as to how to make it more farmer friendly? Because adoption rate, in my opinion, is almost directly related to how usable a product is. So if you could just give your thoughts on that.
Well, the fun part of where I've evolved to today is I get to work with a lot of startups, and the first thing I would highly advise them to is don't let existing technology be your nemesis. Several times I've showed up to a demo and we spend more time fixing the proven technology than actually implementing their new technology. That's self-defeating. The next thing I would say, a lot of the testing and the data collection we do, we seem to have hit a wall where all these data collection companies, the Field Views, the John Deere Op Center, the SMS, they push their updates right in the busiest season. How progressive is that, I guess, is the politest way I can put that. You go through the season and you think you got everything dialed in, and all of a sudden, whoop, time to do an update. Did they not know what season, in the heat of the season, precision planning's even got to the point where they tell you, don't even update your iPhone. It's like, well, don't forget to don't update our field view or something like that. But no, it's just several subtle little things when you actually work with farmers and implement them through the process. That's what I get good fortune to doing a lot right now. We bring new technology right to the farmers at a very early startup stage. So helping them companies have that aha moment. One of the companies I know Russell works with, we've had them out there, and their first realization was Iowa dirt's better than North Carolina dirt. That's pretty cool when you see that happen live. We've had PhDs out of New York show up in the field. Just that reaction of when you put the farmer and the PhD together in the field, and we eliminate a lot of wasted time right then and there, because they learn what each other truly wants to know and share. And the success ratio of the companies that we're working with right now is probably 4 to 5 times better than your average VC company in that. So it's proven system that seems to be starting to work very well.
Wonderful. And like you were making the comparison between Iowa dirt and North Carolina dirt, Jimmy, you travel all over the country. I'm wondering if you can kind of just give us your perspective on attitudes towards conservation across the country, and how you see that changing or evolving. What are you seeing across the country?
I think we're in a time of transition, and farmers are looking for ways to improve, and they're skeptical of some things, and they want to see a playbook, or they want to see it visually, and that visually you can't compare. I've seen an author of books talking about soil health, and he wrote 2 books, David Montgomery to start with, but his 3rd book was so much better. And why it was so much better is he started practicing in his own garden and saw the soil changing in his own soil in his own garden. And I told him that the passion was just oozing out of him after that, and he said, no, it didn't change me, but it does. And so I think that's what farmers want. They want to see it, and they want to believe it. That trust comes hard sometimes. And so, I think the perspective is everybody is beginning to see that we need to change, and we need to cut back inputs and equipment and try to manage better in a tighter market. And so I think it's critical as Leopold recipients and stewards that we tell that story, and we find companies like we're at today at BASF to work together to tell that story and to build a playbook that helps producers across the country understand. And funding-wise, right now, we have the largest opportunity we've ever had in the federal government with $20 billion investment into conservation. This year, the budget's doubled at NRCS, and it's going to double again next October 1st. Massive amount of money to be put on the ground. And I think the message that we need to say is we need to spend it wisely to make the greatest change possible, because we know that funding won't be there forever. And so it's now is the time, now is the moment to seize. And if we bobble this, we bobble our soil and our foundation, and your house won't stand if the foundation is cracking.
Absolutely, absolutely. That's it segues right into, I'd like to ask for Russell and Loran's opinion on, as there's more attention given to regeneratively grown products, to our food systems, to all of that, somebody that is interested in beginning a conservation journey, what advice would you give them, and kind of what was your biggest aha moment or stumbling block when you started going further and further down a conservation pathway?
I would say start small, 10-20% of your acres. I mean, when we did the Haney test, we did it over 4 years in 25% increments, and it was a way for us to monitor it and measure it against our old practices and see those benefits. My aha moment was, if you've never seen a rainfall simulator, look it up on YouTube. It essentially had conventional tilled ground, regular no-till with regenerative practices, and then we had some pasture ground. And it's got two buckets. One bucket is the water that infiltrates through the soil, and it goes in the back bucket, and the front one is runoff. Even in no-till, we had massive amounts of runoff, a lot of soil loss. It looked like chocolate milk. And then the no-till with regenerative practices and the pasture, the perennial pasture, were the only two that actually infiltrated water. And we put like an inch of water on, and then they flipped it over, and it was dust, just powder, even in the no-till, because it only went down about 1/4 of an inch, and everything underneath that was dry. And that was my aha moment, that yes, we can no-till the ground, but even no-till alone it's not enough to fix the system.
The first steps I would recommend is start simple and easy, but find a mentor and find one you can trust. And then, last week at the conference I was at, I told everybody, question everything, question everyone, and question me. If we can't help find you the answers, that means we've got to keep pushing harder. And usually it's the simplest little things that hold a lot of us back until you see that aha moment. The next thing I would say behind seeing the video or the rainfall simulator, volunteer to have it done on your soils. First time I seen mine on there, I called it the old Jesus test. Oh Jesus, this ain't gonna work, this ain't gonna work, this ain't gonna work. And all of a sudden you're like, it's working. It's them lasting little simple things is what seals the deal in the end.
I also, I truly believe that the economics of what you're doing is incredibly important, because kind of the first step to sustainability is sustaining the farmer's ability to stay on the land. So, Jimmy, can you talk a little bit about how conservation can help the farmer rancher's bottom line, and how do you explain that to somebody?
That's getting to understand, first of all, in the no-till system and the cover crop system that we're in, we started eliminating a lot of equipment. We went from all our tillage equipment, and believe me, we were really good at tillage, so we had a lot of equipment. A lot of people tell me, it's too expensive to start in the no-till because you got to buy these no-till planter, you got to buy this drill and different things. And then it's like, my first question always is, well, what about selling what you have that you're not going to use if this is what you're going to go to? And immediately on our operation, and at that moment in time, we were probably about 2,200 acres of tilled land that we were going to no-till. between then and year 3, we cut out just about $125,000 a year just in fuel that we were burning that we didn't need to burn. And then we took away all the depreciation, wear and tear on about 7 pieces of equipment, tires, bearings, you just name it, that we're normally, so our repairs come down 50-some thousand a year on all that equipment. And then you started cutting back on nutrients. You started using the Haney test, and immediately, when you look at the Haney test versus the other test that Russell was talking about, the Malic 3, you're only looking at one side of the equation. You're looking at inorganic side with them other tests. The Haney looks at organic side, and so we had nutrients there that we didn't know was there, and immediately we cut back by 40% on our fertilizer and no yield drop because it was already there. And so that added another, $70-some thousand, $80,000 out of our budget. And so immediately we became very profitable, but just because we cut back our cost and our production was the same. So it shifted the table really quickly, and then from there it's just grown into other market opportunities.
Can I make a point on that?
Absolutely.
How many of y'all like to drink clean water? So I don't get to see the grower information, but I work closely with the lab on a lot of projects, so I do get to see some collected data. On about 400,000 samples across the U.S., if you look at, and I'm not knocking on them, I'm not bashing them, but our NCDA with North Carolina, they don't test for nitrogen when they test our soils. Do you think that our soils are devoid of nitrogen? No. There's nitrogen there, but they don't test for it. 90% of the laboratories in the U.S., when they do a soil test, they don't test for nitrogen unless you specifically request it, and then typically they just test for nitrate. So we still got ammonium, we've got the organics. The average Haney test in the U.S. right now has about 40 to 50 pounds of nitrogen that's already there that we can take a credit for. So let's just talk about North Carolina real quick. Mm-hmm. In North Carolina, we grow roughly about 1 million acres of corn. So that means if farmers were to utilize that Haney test, we could save just in North Carolina 40 to 50 million pounds of nitrogen that we wouldn't apply to our fields, that wouldn't have the ability, I'm not saying it does, but we do have the ability, the risk of either flushing it down through the sand into our water table, or in clays where I farm, where you get shear erosion, where it goes into our streams and waters. And that's yearly. And the cost on that is roughly to the farmer about 40 cents an acre to run the entire test to get all of your nutrients. So we can make an investment of about $400,000, and we can save 40 to 50 million pounds of nitrogen every year going out in this state. But nobody has made the investment in the state, and I know that they know about it, for us to be able to do that.
Yeah, that's a great point. And Jimmy had made a point in an earlier conversation about, as he's building the soil organic matter and putting carbon into the soil. And I had an aha moment about the water filter. Can you just reiterate that? Because that was enlightening to me.
Yeah, so pre-settlement, before we started breaking out the prairie here in America, our soil organic matter was in the teens, 13 and up, a few low 20% in certain regions. And on the average now, we're somewhere around 2% or less than 2% on the average. There's soils all across the country that there are 4s and 5s, but in small quantities compared to everybody else. It's debatable, 52 to 58% of that soil organic matter is carbon. So if you take, and we reduced from 13% to 5%, look at the pounds of carbon that we took out of the soil. That's God's natural filtering ability for our water. So why do we have excess nitrates in our water? First of all, we're over applying because we're not counting for everything. Second of all, we don't have the filtering system that was there in carbon, because if you were going to, at home, and they have these, and you see them on television all the time, if you want to filter your water at your tap, what do? You put a carbon filter on your tap. We took the carbon filter out. So that's why we have all these nutrients in our water supply.
A 7% reduction in carbon is about 140,000 pounds of carbon to the acre.
I wanted to bring that all the way home. Go back to some of the first water testing we did was tile line monitoring. Everything in our area of Iowa is tile drained. So we have tile lines that are dumping water. You know, everybody'd say that's the problem. Out of 40 tile lines in our county that were monitored that time, we started noticing only 2 were not running all the time. It took over a 2-inch flush to get our tile line to run. And even then, we were below drinking water standards. You bring that full circle to where we're at today. Jimmy talked about the filter. You know, one of the key things I focus on carbon for is number I heard in Australia the one time was for every gram of carbon we can hold in the soil, we hold 8 grams of water. Now, as we start talking about some of these weather cycles and that, how can my soil hold so much more water? How can we get more efficient on nitrogen and stuff like that? Get the carbon in the soil. It's that simple. You know, when we talk about nitrogen management, last year we were at 0.365 pounds of N per bushel. I think Iowa State University is at 1.1 yet. I hear a lot of guys that hope to get to 5.5 to 0.6. You know, I'm not going to say we're going to get that 0.365 every year, but it goes back to some of the data and the stuff that we've been doing over the years gave me the confidence to pull the plug on the last nitrogen application. I mean, if you've seen the video, that corn was severely drought stressed, but it still went 260 bushel an acre.
Yeah, it is fascinating. I also want to touch on real quick that kind of the global community and how we're learning from each other. Loran, you mentioned, you know, contacts in Australia, but it's not just North Carolina or Oklahoma or Iowa farmers. It's a global community looking at figuring out what's right for their particular environment. So, Loran, if you could just touch on kind of how you're helping folks outside of the U.S., you know, learn from you and from others.
Well, probably one of the most impactful presentations I've ever done was about coming up on 3 years ago this week. I was asked to go to Ukraine right before the war escalated. What was supposed to be a half-hour presentation ended up being about a 3-4 hour conversation. But by the end of that meeting, we gave the farmers the confidence that they could get by with less. And as things started unfolding, we started getting live reports that the farmers were confident, you know, they were doing exactly what we told them we've done and they could do, and getting that instant feedback. You know, and to this day, I will return to Ukraine. You know, it scares the living daylights out of my wife that I will return there as soon as possible. But I know the impact we can have. And what more can we do as farmers than help another farmer learn and experience what we're doing? And it's a two-way street, because the minute you start teaching, you learn. And, you know, that's probably the value this whole session has to me is iron sharpens iron, and we're with some pretty good iron right now.
Yeah, so I'm just gonna kind of take the ricochet as a compliment. I'm just up here shining a spotlight on these rock stars.
I haven't even brought up Oprah yet.
So I know we're kind of getting a little bit close to the end of the session, but what I'd like to do is kind of go right down the row. And what is something that you've learned, and perhaps what is something that you tried and you failed at and you learned from on this conservation journey that you've been on? Jimmy, I'll start with you.
Well, you know, every time we fail, it's a really learning opportunity, and we try to where we're at in Oklahoma, there's hardly any corn or beans grown, and so it's always been kind of a double dog dare, I want to say, that for me to grow corn and beans just to prove I can. And so I planted corn when typically everybody else plants corn. And we have a lot of heat in the summertime, and so we had aflatoxin issues, and we couldn't get it pollinated and all, and it was kind of a wreck. And so I had to retool, and so the next year, instead of planting very early, we planted in July. with a 100-day corn, and we missed the heat in pollination. Our corn was healthy. It was behind a cover crop. We had cereal rye growing in the corn as it was growing. We raised 140 bushel of corn on 0 units of N that year. And so it turned out to be the failure, which most people would have just give up. Instead, we retooled and rethought what the real issues were, and come back with different dates and a different plan of attack, and made that successful. And we grow soybeans in a similar way. So you just got to know your context, and when you fail, and we're all going to fail, we're going to have these bad moments, miscalculations, Mother Nature that plays in. It's just take and learn from that and move forward and stay the course. Because if you don't stay the course, you're never going to get to your destination.
Wonderful. Wonderful. Russell, how about you?
I think my first failure was I learned that a John Deere corn planter could make beautiful round bales of cover crop from one end of the field to the other. We planted our cover crop way too thick, and then it seems like everything on that planter, including the tires that would roll, made a round bale, and we had to take a torch, and we actually had to torch it off. It was wrapped up so tight. We've had nutrient problems where, you know, we heard people talk about reducing nutrients. You can reduce nutrients, and we can test for it scientifically. The technology is there for my generation. But we tried to push that a little too hard, and we didn't test for it and know what we actually could reduce. And we've dinged our corn yield on some fields 40, 50 bushels. When you lose money like that, it doesn't take long for you to learn the lesson like Jimmy's talking about. And the ultimate thing, that's why I say start small. So our farm is almost a research farm where one of the ones we've worked the most with is Hickory Lincolnton, and we'll have 6 different plots across a 10-acre field. So they're small, we can learn from those, and then we can apply that to a greater number of acres the next year. So we don't really do like a full 40, 50-acre field and something new. We bring those plots down to size.
Wonderful. And Loran?
I would say the high and the low is the same thing. The minute you stick your neck out, that 8-to-1, I keep going back to the 8-to-1 ratio of carbon and water. It's also about the friends you make versus the enemies you'll create. Because there's some people that just can't stand you having a little bit of success, and they want to bring you down to your level, and I guess I don't have time for them. I'm just going to keep focusing on the positive people, and appreciate the time and effort that y'all put into this today, and our host and all that.
So, folks, I'd just like to tell you, if you want to learn more about these spectacular land stewards or any of the other 200 Leopold Conservation Award recipients that have been recognized throughout the program, if you go to sandcountyfoundation.org, you can see any and all of their videos. You can read about their story. You can be inspired. You can find something that resonates with you. Because we're all in this together. We want to learn from each other. We want to grow together. We want to share the highs and the lows. So if you wouldn't mind, I think our panelists deserve a round of applause for being up here and sharing some timeless wisdom. So thank you all, and I believe this concludes our program for today. Look forward to talking with you again sometime soon.